Jason Momoa recently did an interview with Ellen where he talked about his experience in working on Denis Villeneuve's Dune. After watching it, I think this was a very pleasant interview that reveals a few things about Jason, as well as what we might get to see out of his character, the fan favorite Duncan Idaho, in this upcoming film adaptation. So I'd like to go ahead and show a few clips from the Dune section of his interview with Ellen, and we'll pause it and break it down as we go.
You have a new movie coming out this year called Dune, which, first of all, tell me about it, but I hear that it was shot in Jordan in a very cool location.
Yeah, we got to shoot in Wadi Rum, which was, I've never seen anything like it. It was like shooting on another planet, and Denis Villeneuve is shooting it, who did, Sicario and Arrival.
So he first talks about his experience filming in Wadi Rum, Jordan, and it's clear how in awe he was just to be there, that it was like being on another planet. I was so excited when I first heard they were filming there. There's just no way to faithfully recreate Arrakis in a studio. In this story, the members of House Atreides are experiencing great upheaval and culture shock as they land on Dune, and to have that authentic experience of being in the desert only adds to the actors' performances, giving it that authenticity this film deserves. Josh Brolin also has released little videos of himself just taking all of it in and marveling about how beautiful and peaceful the landscape was. Timothée Chalamet also has similar comments in the Vanity Fair piece talking about the filming location. He goes on to describe it as otherworldly and unbearably hot at times, which is Arrakis to a T. Jason also mentions here how honored he was to be working with Denis Villeneuve. And I think it's really nice to know that so many actors have really bought into the director's vision of this story, which Denis has stressed will be a faithful adaptation of what he pictured when he read the book as a child. Let's continue, shall we?
It was an honor to do that with him, and it's a pretty stellar cast. I've never been a part of something so big. There was a book by Frank Herbert that did Dune was made, I want to say like maybe in the 80s. It's a retelling of that, and I get to play this character named Duncan Idaho, who's kind of like this master swordsman who's made the right-hand man to Duke Leto, who is Oscar Isaac's. And he's kind of he's the first person to land and who's sent out to land on Dune, and that's when I meet the character of that Javier Bardem plays, which I can't believe I had scenes with Javier Bardem. And then it's him and Timothée Chalamet, Josh Brolin, and Rebecca Ferguson, and Stellan Skarsgård. I'm like, it's a pretty massive film, and I gotta be like this little. He's kind of the Han Solo-esque of the group. He's kind of the rogue warrior who protects Timothée Chalamet, and he serves Oscar Isaacs.
Okay, so obviously the first two things that stand out here is that Jason doesn't know when Frank Herbert's book Dune was released, which was actually in the 60s, and he got his last name wrong. But to be honest, this doesn't really bother me that much. These are actors that jump from franchise to franchise, and we can't expect them to be as loyal or as knowledgeable about the source material as an average fan would be. I'm just glad he references Frank Herbert at all, and that he mentions that it's a retelling of the book, and not a remake of David Lynch's movie. So that's reassuring. I think the most important thing for Jason is to have a good grasp on who his character is, so that Denis can direct him to a performance that's faithful to the source material. Overall, I'd say that he seems to have a decent grasp of his character, Duncan Idaho, describing him as the Han Solo type, the sort of rogue warrior that protects Paul, and that he is the right-hand man to the Duke. In the story of Dune, before the entirety of House Atreides makes their way to Arrakis, Duke Leto sends Duncan ahead of them as an ambassador to the Fremen, the desert-dwelling natives of Arrakis. It really demonstrates the confidence Leto has in Duncan, as he would be the Fremen's first impression of House Atreides, and it is vital that they form an alliance with them. Jason relates that his character is sent ahead and encounters Javier, who plays the role of Fremen leader Stilgar. The initial encounter between Duncan and Stilgar and his tribe is not detailed in the book. However, the members of House Atreides often reference Duncan's reports of his dealings with the Fremen and what he's observed. So the importance of his work is certainly felt early on in the story. So perhaps this means that early on in the film, we will be getting a scene to establish the relationship that Duncan has with the Fremen and his mission on Arrakis. Let's continue with the last part of this interview.
What a great cast. Oh my God.
It's a mass.
Everybody you mentioned. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And that comes out in December, right?
Yeah, it comes out in December. Yeah, but it's
Okay.
I've never got to work with that kind of talent before, so it was pretty scary. I was a little my first day of work. I'm not usually hired to be the guy that does all the exposition and does all the sci-fi jargon, but I was the guy, and I got Javier and Brolin and Oscar and Timothy, and I was super nervous, man. It was pretty, and it's like one of the key scenes in it. So I'm excited for everybody to see it.
Once again, he sounds like he was so humbled just to be in the presence of such great talent. He expresses nervousness in having a key piece of dialogue in the movie, stating he's usually not hired to be that guy with all the exposition. I'm sure Jason did quite well, and I am really glad to know that his character is playing a pivotal role in this scene. The scene he's referencing is most likely when Duke Leto is holding a crucial strategy meeting with his advisors shortly after they've arrived on Arrakis, and it is very important in establishing an alliance with the Fremen. His description of his role in the film does give me hope that Duncan will serve a vital part in the story as he is depicted in the book. In the story of Dune, his role can be described as minor in comparison to the other characters, but he is still important to the plot. However, in previous adaptations, his role was greatly diminished at the expense of trying to fit in as much of the story as they could into a short amount of time. So a lot of Duncan Idaho fans are hoping that this adaptation will finally do his character justice, and this interview here gives me hope that it will. Overall, I really enjoyed this interview. In a lot of interviews that I've seen, there is such an appreciation from the cast just to be a part of this story, and marveling at the scale of it and the direction by Denis. As I mentioned earlier, I most appreciate when they reference Frank Herbert and give credit to the man who built this universe. I am even more excited to see Jason Momoa bring Duncan to life. Also, if you haven't seen my lore video, Who is Duncan Idaho, I'd encourage you to check that out. In that video, I go a little deeper into who his character is and the vital role he plays in the story of Dune. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a thumbs up if you did, and be sure to subscribe for more Dune and other sci-fi and fantasy content. And let me know your thoughts on this interview. Was there anything either good or bad about Jason's comments that stood out to you? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you all so much for your support, and as always, have a very nerdy day.